Carolyn Fazio is Chief Executive and Senior Strategist for Fazio International Limited, an international consulting firm serving membership-based organizations, trade associations, and professional societies and other nonprofit institutions. Her professional service portfolio includes strategic planning, volunteer management and motivation, resource development, organizational management, and public relations and sponsorships. Let's welcome Carolyn to the show. How are you today, Carolyn?
Thank you, Gail. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing just fine.
Well, I have to tell you, my listeners out there, I've known Carolyn for a number of years, worked on committees with her, been in organizations with her, and she is one of the smartest and sharpest minds on the planet. Whenever you think something that won't work or something doesn't work, she comes up with some way to get around it or make it happen. So I'm going to ask you for my first question. Much of what you do professionally requires a strong business sense. So was that your field of study in school?
Actually not. My field of study was music theory and composition. And then I decided I did not want to stay with that, and I did not want to be a full-time performer. I wanted to get into arts management. And when you get into arts management, you are automatically thrown into the world of fundraising, and so planning and fundraising and events kind of all merged together. And that was my first foray into working with, actually, the orchestras are considered membership-based organizations, the membership being the people who buy the tickets and the people who support the group financially.
That's so interesting because it's true. I mean, every art organization that I know is always looking for money, and they're always looking for fundraisers. And I mastermind with a group of not-for-profits. I facilitate them. This is a pro bono thing I do. And I have, for example, like the Girl Scouts and Habitat for Humanity. But I also have two arts foundations, one Arts for Learning and one the Miami Music Project. And they're always looking for money. And so it's just amazing that music led you to fundraising, because it's true. I mean, I know that they're always looking for money. So you developed that as a career.
Yes, I actually did. My first full-time job in arts management was in the development department for the National Symphony Orchestra based in Washington, D.C. And in fact, the person who turned out to then be my husband and business partner and best friend was the consultant to the orchestra for their program. So he and I started working together in 1971, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's just amazing. It's great that you could work with him, because I always tease and say I could never have worked with my husband. I mean, we did things as a team in terms of things we built together, but in terms of business, I really didn't. I mean, I understood what he did, but I never got involved in it because he was in construction, and I can't even change a light bulb. And of course, he said whenever I got an idea, he had to do the work because he had to go and build a facility for me. But
well, there you go.
That's one way of doing it.
In our instance, in the fundraising, because fundraising is equal parts of art and science, it was very, very good to be working with someone who understood the same cast of characters that you did, knew where the bodies were buried the same as I did, and was able to join me in creating strategies, no matter what the client might have been, whether it was an educational institution or an arts organization. I found it was a lot easier to have someone who would be there. And we were not joined at the hip because we each traveled separately for different clients and had different types of groups that we worked with. He would always be there and understand what I was going through. And I think if I had been a school teacher while he was a development professional, or if he had been, the owner of, a fishing boat while I was doing the fundraising, I think it would have been harder So it was a perfect blend, and our kids were raised with knowing that one of us would always be home and one of us might be on the road. It was a fact of life that our type of work took us to where the organizations were based, and we worked from wherever we needed to.
You know, that's an interesting commentary because so many people today who are raising kids say, oh, we have to be home and we have to do this and we have to do that. And while it's good, usually if one parent is home, uh, kids get raised okay, get raised right, and they know what their responsibilities are as well. But what were the pluses and minuses of striking out on your own to found a consulting firm?
Well, one of the pluses was that we definitely could make our own schedule. So it was much easier for me to say, Charlie, you better get that early plane home because I have to leave at 6 a.m. the next morning. In many cases, we had twin daughters, and in many cases, before they started school, they would go with us. So if he was in a meeting, I had both of them. If I was in a meeting, he had both of them. There are a lot of colleges around the country that got called upon to provide babysitters. So we just figured out ways of working it. But in terms of founding our own company, one of the big pluses was that we knew that we wanted to dedicate our practice to nonprofit organizations, small, medium, and large. And we knew that the very small organizations could not nearly afford the same hourly rate or project rate that a major symphony could pay. So we decided that we would do a certain number of low-fee or pro bono work every single month of the year. We would do something for someone. And anyone who came to work for us had to follow that same thing. And it could be something that they were interested in as long as it had nothing to do with politics or religion. That was kind of a rule. We didn't want to become known as the Democratic fundraisers or the this or that issue fundraiser. So as we moved into working with both trade associations and professional societies, we stuck to that of doing a lot of pro bono, and obviously that's how you and I came to know one another through the work that both of us do with nonprofit organizations in Florida. I think one of the most difficult things of striking out on one's own is facing the inevitable month in which you say, holy mackerel, are we going to make payroll? And that happens because nonprofit clients sometimes tend to pay slower, not deliberately, but simply because they are making their own payroll.
So far in your career, Carolyn, who has been your most interesting client?
I would have to say that our most interesting client, hands down, was when we had the opportunity to create a charitable foundation for King Hussein of Jordan. His wife, Queen Alia, had died in a helicopter crash while she was inspecting hospital conditions. And her friends in the United States wanted to set up a scholarship fund for her, but first they wanted to find out whether or not the money would actually be used in Jordan. My husband, Charles, was invited to go over and take a look at the needs situation in Jordan. And Jordan is not an oil-rich country, so there were quite a few needs. There were needs of the elderly, handicapped, mentally challenged, on and on and on, feeding children, all of it. So he and I actually sat down with Princess Basma, who was Hussein's sister, and with Hussein, and said, look, if you're really interested in doing this, we can help you put together a charitable foundation which can attract gifts, not just for scholarships from the people that Alia knew when she was in the U.S., but also from your colleagues and friends throughout the entire Mideast. And that is exactly what we did and exactly what happened. And it was called the Queen Alia Foundation. In Arabic, it was known as Queen Alia's Purse, which was very different from the way we would think of a charity. But it is still going today. And Queen Noor, who had married Hussein after the death of Alia, she continued it on, as did Princess Basma, his sister. So I would have to say that the 2 years we spent on that project were by far the most interesting client.
Well, now, how on earth did they find you? That's a question.
Okay, my husband was very well known in the Georgetown University world, and at that point he was on the board of directors at Georgetown, and an attorney who had been a friend of Queen Alia knew of our work and approached Charlie in the very first place. And when Charlie said, I can't help you to put together a program when I know nothing about the country, how they felt about her, and where the money would do the most good, that attorney then arranged for Charlie first, and then I went with him on subsequent trips, to be flown over to Amman, Jordan, and to begin to work with Princess Basma and some of the other members of the royal family, and eventually work with the king himself to put the whole thing together.
Wow. So you and your husband moved your entire consulting operation from D.C. to Florida. So what made you decide to take that step? Why did you do that? Because certainly D.C. is the heart of most non-for-profits.
As consultants, you wind up going to your client. You go to their meetings, you go to their board of directors, you go to see their major prospects. And we discovered that over a 3-year cycle in Washington, D.C., after we had been in business for a number of years, we did a look back of 3 years and found out there had only been one substantive meeting held in our office. So there was nothing there that was holding us there. It was also very fortuitous in terms of being the age of communication. So you could communicate by fax. This was 1986 when we made the switch. You had faxes. We had one of the first email programs, which was called MCI Mail. So I had a woman who was a very good writer who wrote case statements and promotional materials, whatever I needed. She was based in New York, and she could send me things through this convoluted MCI mail system. So we had the ability, and then don't forget, cell phones were just coming into play at that point. So we had the ability to communicate with our clients and still be wherever they needed us to be for meetings. I was tired of having to leave Washington a day early in order to make sure that we got to whatever winter destination we had to get to in order to be on the scene for meetings. And it was a lifestyle change for us. It was actually the best decision we ever made from a business standpoint. We were well enough known and, more important, well enough respected by the association community based in Washington, and we were also becoming well known among the Florida organizations because of our pro bono work with the Florida Society of Association Executives. So yes, it was a gamble for sure. We moved some people with us, and whoever did not want to move to Florida for their own family reasons or whatever, we helped them to find other positions in Washington, D.C. So it was a win for whomever was involved.
Well, there's been such a change in what people join today. Do you think that professional societies and trade associations will continue to grow?
I don't know that they will continue to grow larger in terms of the number of members, but I think the way they will have to grow is the types and quality of service that they offer to their members. For example, you may have had 10 widget manufacturers who were each a member of the widget association. Well, now they're down to only 2 widget manufacturers because everybody else has been bought up or gone out of business. So now you've got 2 large members. They're not going to be willing to pay the same amount of dues that 10 separate company members were. So you have to be very creative on the association side in terms of the kinds of services